Good morning to those of you in the US, and good afternoon to those of you in Europe. We have an exciting presentation for everybody today. Before we get going, though, I have a quick question, which I'm hoping attendees can put their answers in the Q&A. When was the last time a product spec sheet made someone feel something? Just give you a second to answer. All right. Well, obviously, that was a bit of a leading question because Elliot's session is about why that gap exists and what to do about it. But first, a few words from our sponsors from SAMPS. If you've ever thought that getting a great life science product into the right hands matters just as much as building it, SAMPS is built for you. We're a community of sales and marketing professionals who work specifically in life sciences, and we exist to make sure our craft gets the attention it deserves. If you're new here, welcome and thanks for joining us. You've found your tribe. And if you've been part of this community for a while, we're glad you're back. There's a lot going on in this community over the next couple of months that I'd like to share with you. Upcoming in April is our 5th annual SAMPS Awards, which is presented in partnership with BioCompare. If someone in your network deserves recognition, this is a great way to pay it forward to them and nominate them for one of the awards. Our nominations are closing next week on March 31st, so please get your nominations in, and you can find out more about the nominations and the awards on the samps.org website. The next webinar in April is by the fantastic Andy Crestadina. He's coming back with us for round 2. He presented at the SAMPS December meeting in Boston, and he's going to present a different topic this time on prompting and how to build custom GPTs for marketers. So please get your registration in for April 29th, and that's also on the SAMPS.org website. And last but not least, SAMPS is coming to Cambridge again on June 24th. We have 5 fabulous speakers. Our motivational speaker, Jim Lusty, and Mark Fosner, who is a life science insider from both the sales and marketing side, will be our keynote speakers. So please don't miss out, especially if you're in the UK and in Europe. June 24th is the date at Wolfson College in Cambridge, UK. Okay, so without further ado, Elliot. He has over a decade of experience in the sports industry, creating products for the FIFA World Cup and Olympics at Adidas and Asics. He later transitioned into tech and B2B, where he led marketing and shaped the stories behind hundreds of products and ventures. The framework Elliot developed helps teams craft clear, compelling, strategic narratives. And recently, he was recognized as one of the UK's top product marketers, ranking 7th on the list of most influential in the field. Elliot's going to share with us why your product needs a narrative. So over to you, Elliot.
Wow, what an intro. Thank you for that. And hello to everybody. Really happy to share the next 45 minutes to an hour with all of you. I honestly owe so much of my own learning and development simply to listening to other marketers. And so I'm very happy to share with you everything that I've learned, all the things I've done right and all the things I've done wrong, and that you can learn from them. And as Jasmine said, I've really focused my career around one specific thing, which is how to build a product narrative. And my reason for that is I was able to work at some amazing places, Adidas, Asics, Babbel, and creating incredible innovative products. And I learned pretty quickly from those above me that the products that sell the best and the products that win the market aren't the best products, they're the ones with the best product stories. But then when I equally asked those people, well, what is a story? How do you write one? And what's the difference between a good one and a great one? They would say, I don't know. And I found this my whole career is a massive dissonance. Every single person I've met as a marketer believes they're a good storyteller or believes that storytelling is important. But when I ask, have you ever actually studied it and do you know have a process for it? They say no. And so I'm hoping to change that with all of you today and just basically give you a very simple process. I often think marketing is something that's quite simple that we all have made more complicated than it needs to be. And hopefully over the next 45 minutes, we're going to change that. So I'm leaping over to my presentation now. At any point, if I break up, I'm on the wrong slide. Jasmine, you just let me know. Elliot, we're lost. But without further ado, yeah, the title, which I wanted to share with all of you, the full screen, there we go, is products don't win markets, narratives do, or why does your product need a narrative? And literally what we're going to be doing over the next around 45 minutes is a really clear objective. I want to share with you the science of storytelling. So really getting into away from it just a creative thing, but why it works. But not for any reason, but for a specific reason to build a product narrative, because I think that is the most important application for all of us in this room or this very digital room. I've been doing this for a very long time, so I've been lucky to be a CMO, to lead marketing teams, but also to be brought in fractionally, basically to help teams who have very boring products, very complicated products, or very boring and complicated products to find the story that they can tell better than anyone else in the market. And what I'm going to be showing you today is the process that I worked with them to do. And I've had a nice adventure through that. You know, as Jasmine said, I started at Adidas. What a great storytelling brand. And to learn things like from the Football World Cup and the Olympics about how these stories matter. For example, it costs around $150 for a sports kit, a Liverpool jersey, but it costs around $5 to make. Why? Because people aren't buying into the plastic, they're buying into the story that's been embedded into it. I then went into tech and into B2B and learned that, if you've got around 50 touch points before someone signs a contract, that's a lot of stories that need to be told. And those stories can get pretty complicated if you're not consistent about them. Then, being a CMO for the first time with Arian, it was my role to kind of come into a very crowded market with a very small budget and learn how can you tell a story that is very unique and very clear in a health tech. And I know that's very close to all of your lives. And I'll show you a little bit of an example about how I did that. And ultimately, where I am today is leading storytelling. So, learning very quickly that this is my marketing superpower and working with teams all around the world to help them understand storytelling and help train them in the world of storytelling. Ultimately, that helped me create a number of books, all of which are free for all of you. So don't worry if I skip the slides too much or I'm saying too many things. This session is just meant to inspire you, and you can quite easily follow this QR code, which I'll show you again later on. So don't worry if you miss it, and you can download all of these books and learn a little bit more about how I apply this as well. But really, if you don't want to read those books, don't worry. I made it very easy for you. I'm going to summarize it very quickly. Once again, I told you it's all about simplification. What I learned from writing those books is that products sell by being easy to notice and easy to buy. And complex products fail not because they lack features, but because they overload the brain. And storytelling works because it compresses complexity into a form that the brain can process, remember, and act on. And that is why it's so effective, especially these days. So really what I like to do is kind of split this between two types of people. I find myself having to convince marketers and convince product people. Marketers, it's really easy. Scientifically, it's been proven that no one is more easy to persuade than marketing people. And it makes sense. We're the persuaders, but we're also the most persuadable. I am part of that group. I am very easily persuaded. And it's easy to see why. So the statistics are there. You get 20 times as much recall memory wise when information is delivered as part of a story. So when your engineering team is trying to force you to write more white papers because we believe that we just want more features, 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 it's not true. The brain loves storytelling and will remember those features if it's delivered as part of a story 20 times as much. It's not just memorization, it's also preference. Research has shown that people prefer information when it's delivered as part of a story, 92% of people, in fact. And then it's also about speed. It's been proven that the brain processes meaningful emotion from storytelling visuals 60,000 times faster than a long form copy. And in today's modern world, how fast things are moving, it's very important to be quick. So that's marketing. Hopefully, every marketer is convinced, but I spend most of my time trying to convince engineers. And engineers need to be convinced with a different kind of way. And I use this as an example. On the screen, you can see 60 objects. And these objects were all bought between $1 and $2 from a thrift shop by two journalists who wanted to do an experiment. They wanted to prove the power of storytelling on a product. So what they did is that they bought these 60 items, and what they did is ask 60 different journalist friends to write a story about each of them and then put them on eBay. And they wanted to see that if each of these items had a story attached to them, could they sell them for more money? So what they did is they spent $129 on these 60 items from a thrift shop. They sold them for 3,612. So they made a 28x profit. So this is a really good lesson for your engineering and your product teams that actually this is not marketing fluff. Stories add value to products. And it's also a lesson for all of you. The next time you're going to sell something online, take the time to write a quick little story and you will increase your value to do that. So why is this happening? What I want to show you over the next 40 minutes is that there's three things that can contribute to your product story. And ultimately, when we're building a product story, we need to use an understanding of our product to ask the question, what value does your product create? We need to have an understanding of our audience to ask the question, which customers care most about this value? And we need to have an understanding of our market to understand why can we deliver this value better than anyone else. And if you have these three things, you can deliver a strong product narrative. Ultimately, I ask these three questions to every company I go into and advise. And you would think that most people in the company should be able to answer those questions. They're pretty simple things. But on average, I get around 19% alignment. When I speak to sales, I speak to product, I speak to the C level, and everyone is telling different stories. And most of you have probably experienced this before. We're not as aligned as we think we are. And how can you possibly convince people outside what your story is when nobody inside the company can agree what it is? And so for me, this is the first lesson of product storytelling is you need to gain alignment about what your narrative is. Ultimately, what I want to show you is that it comes down to three things: logic, emotion, and credibility. This is what Aristotle believed, that in order to persuade someone of anything, you need these three things. And this is what we're going to be doing today is I'm going to give you a quick lesson in each of these things. I'm going to show you how the brain likes logical storytelling and how we can use it, how it is affected by emotional storytelling, and then finally, and most importantly, how it is affected by credible storytelling and how you can use these three things to build a product narrative. So ultimately, I said, I promise I'll keep this simple, and this is as simple as it gets. By the end of this session, I want you to remember one thing, and it's this sentence: that storytelling comes down to one thing. It comes down to here's how much better your life will be. This is what your fact sheets should say, your product pages, your landing page, your sales scripts. Ultimately, we want the audience walking away with an understanding of how much better their life will be. And I'm going to show you how using these three components can help you build that as a product story. So let's start with the easiest one. Logic is a very good place to start. And I'm going to test your brains with a bit of neuroscience. I believe that there's a story embedded within this image. It's not a trick question. As you look at this image, do you see a little story, or what do you see happening? I think I can leave it for a moment while you all type in, but maybe already I can pick on Jasmine and ask her, when you look at this, what story do you see?
I see somebody who's traveling
Yes.
who had to take a bio break and decided didn't have a pocket or didn't have a place to put their passport and boarding card and put it on the railing in the stall.
Now, this is probably very relevant for right now, as I read, it's a bit of a nightmare within US and airports right now. So some of this might be touching home a little bit too much. But let's just analyze what Jasmine said. So Jasmine said we've got a someone, so we've got a protagonist. There's not a human being in this photo, but we can use that context to know that passport doesn't have legs and it didn't get there themselves. Also, Jasmine said we're at an airport, gave a location. Why? Well, we use that context once again to know that's not a normal looking bathroom. And why would you have that white piece of paper in between your passport? They're obviously going somewhere. We've given them an inciting incident, so they've forgotten it. This person didn't mean to leave it there, they've left. And with that, a little bit of implied consequence as well. This person is going to have that horrible moment, which all of us have, where you've tapped every pocket on your body and you feel nothing. And some of you probably already are feeling that anxiety right now, even looking at that photo. And what have we learned now? What I've shown you is an object in a location, a static image. And already, just through Jasmine's answer, and I'm sure with your answers as well, we've built an incredible story. We've built a past, a present, a future, consequence, emotions, and all of these different things. And for me, this is the first thing to learn about product storytelling. Product storytelling doesn't take place on the page, it takes place in our brains. And so, actually, we don't need that much time to be able to affect a great story. As long as we understand how stories work, then we can actually build a very meaningful story in a single powerful image. So let's move on and look at the consequences of that. One quote that I love from Yuval Noah Harari is that humans think in stories and we try to make sense of the world by telling stories. And I think that's absolutely true. And if marketing is the understanding of how people think, feel, and behave, and if we think, feel, and behave with stories, then it's very important for marketers to have a really good understanding of storytelling. Um, Ultimately, if you Google storytelling and how to tell stories, you'll be overwhelmed with a lot of different ideas and structures. And I welcome you to read all of them. Like I say, you've got free access to my book, and I go into all of these. So if you want to study it, you can. But as I say, we haven't got much time. I want to make this simple for you. So what I want to show you is that all of these structures actually can be combined in one way. There's something that connects all of them. And it's really important to understanding what storytelling really is. And it was summarized very beautifully by an author called Matthew Dix, who is a very interesting author because he's not a marketer, he's not a CEO, he's a kindergarten teacher. And kindergarten teachers know a lot about storytelling. He's also the winner of the Storytelling World Cup. Yes, there is a Storytelling World Cup. I didn't know either, but he's won it a lot of times. And he brings storytelling down to one very beautiful sentence. Storytelling can be summarized as a singular moment of realization, revelation, or transformation. And it doesn't matter if it's a 3 hour epic, a huge old novel, a Viking poem, a Bible verse. Ultimately, at the center of that story is a moment where something changes for everyone, where things go from order to chaos. And this is the thing that humans love and we come back to again and again. And all we have to do is identify that moment and communicate it. And there's a really nice recent example of this, a very controversial one. One of the biggest companies in the world now, OpenAI, had to announce itself to the world and do its first big brand campaign. And what do? Do they show their product? Do they show its features? Do they show the brand? No, they showed moments. 4 moments with zero copy and zero context. And yet, as humans, we can look at all of them and understand how a young man who no one's ever shown him how to work out might have this moment of revelation about how AI can help him do something he couldn't do before. Or your car breaking down and feeling like you're stranded, and this moment of revelation where you can ask someone immediately and be saved, or a private moment between two people where they're sharing something that they've learned. This got a lot of controversy at the time because it was so, some people might say, meh. It was harder to understand, a little bit of vague. But like I say, a single second, just like that passport photo, these are moments. And it's a great example of how, if you understand storytelling, you can communicate a lot of meaning in just a single image. Okay, so this is our lesson one. So what can we do with this as marketers? Ultimately, what want you to remember for this first part of the triangle is you need to communicate the contrast. In every bit of sales enablement, your website, if you don't communicate a contrast, your product story will fail at the first huddle. And ultimately, what we're always trying to do is dramatize the problem, is to make this contrast as big as possible so that it connects to the audience. And we're doing this all the time. We're either trying to build a contrast between your product and the alternative, between your brand and the competition, or a contrast between what life is like with a feature or without a feature. And the better we build that contrast, the more we're going to be able to connect with the audience. So remember that 20 times as much memory retention. This is how we grab that to do it. Ultimately, in my cohorts and my workshops, I use this. This is basically a positioning template about where you should build your contrast from. Most of you will have done positioning before where we look at the competitive alternatives, we understand what's unique about us compared to those alternatives, and that's what decides our differentiated value. And really, our differentiated value, the thing that is valuable about what we're saying and why it's differentiated to all of the alternatives in the market, that's where we want to build our story and our contrast behind. So this is why positioning is so important. And this is why I call my book The Story Engine, because I believe product marketing is the best served to be able to tell this story because they own positioning. So if you're wondering about where to start, this is a really good place to start, is to open your positioning and think, what story can we tell better than anyone else in the market, and build your contrast around that moment. Ultimately, as I said, this is all about here's how much better your life will be. Your how much is the contrast. You cannot tell that contrast if you don't have a great understanding of your product. So the first step is you need to have a very good understanding of your product to be able to build the unique differentiated value of it and communicate it into the market. And once you do that, you're going to be able to pass this first rule of storytelling. But if you're like me and you think about what a great story is, you probably don't spend too much time thinking about logic. You probably think of emotion. And Jasmine mentioned it at the beginning. When's the last time you read a product sheet that speaks to you emotionally? And I know in B2B, emotion is kind of a forbidden word. I found that coming from B2C. And I've spent my time trying to convince B2B that emotion is even more powerful within this area, because ultimately there's always a human being at the end of every B2B decision. And they are as much susceptible to emotion as a B2C customer buying a new pair of shoes. Why does it work? Do not hurt your eyes trying to read this graph. I'll walk it through you. But ultimately, what this shows is the relationship between emotion and attention. And it's been proven that the more emotion you create, the more attention you can grab. And these dots all represent things that create both. So in the far right up here, no surprise, animals. This is why you can't turn on the television without seeing a mascot or an animal represented in almost every brand commercial. Why? Because we emotionally connect to them, they grab attention. The problem we have is down in this bottom left corner, product centricity. The thing that we spend all of our budgets and time talking about, ultimately, it's just not that emotional. And this is why we lose so much opportunity to tell stories, because we're focusing way too much on our product. A great example here from my world within tech, if you read something like revenue-driven SEO, AI search optimization, and link building for B2B SaaS, yeah, this might all be true, but it's not going to connect with me and I'm not going to remember it in 5 seconds. So ultimately, we have to find a new way to connect. There's a great understanding of this when you come to understand the work of Daniel Kahneman and the idea of system one and system two thinking. And ultimately, this is the two ways that the brain tries to process information. System one is impulsive. So when Jasmine saw that passport photo, she instantly understood what's happened there. It's very emotional. You get it. It's visual. System two, they call the sleeping policeman. It doesn't like to be woken up unless there's an emergency because it uses so much energy of the brain. And that's this previous slide I've shown you. This is your system two. You didn't learn anything and it forced your brain to wake up. So what we need to be doing in today's world is trying to communicate our product for system one thinking. Ultimately, Daniel Kahneman said it like this: thinking is to humans as swimming is to cats. They can do it, but they prefer not to. And it's very true. We're constantly trying to find ways to save our brain energy. And modern marketers need to lean into this to make it as easy as possible. Remember what I said in the beginning? Storytelling is about making it easy to buy and easy to understand. We can't do this without a basic understanding of what emotions are. I often say that we're in the feelings business. So all of us in this room, we're trying to convince people how you feel about our brand, about our product, or about our features. But to do that, we need to understand the relationship and the difference between feelings and emotions. Feelings are conscious experiences of emotional states. The way you feel today, the way I feel about Coca-Cola versus Pepsi. Emotions are very different. These are bodily, often unconscious responses to stimuli. The best way to think of this is that it's possible to have emotions without feelings, but it's not possible to have feelings without emotions. So when we say we're in the feelings business, we're really in the emotions business, even in B2B. So, first of all, what emotions? Now, I'm going to come back to the questions now, and to you, Jasmine, you can give me your opinion and also maybe read out any opinions here. I'm going to ask you, there's 8 emotions on the screen. Which of these emotions has been scientifically proven, do you think, to influence conversion the most? So if I'm going to influence you to buy something, which of the emotions is most powerful? Content, disgust, anger, fear, sadness, neutral emotion, happiness, or surprise? So I'll give you a minute to all respond and hear your answers. First thoughts from you, Jasmine. Which one of those do you think is most powerful?
So I'll get to that in a second.
Mm.
One of the participants said fear.
Fear, yeah. Fear
Um,
is a fantastic motivator. Think of insurance. No better push to buy insurance than making you think that, hey, something could happen, or you're fearing that something could happen. It's a great motivator and something you can see very much alive in challenger sales.
a couple of folks, and this includes me, said surprise.
Yeah, I mean, surprise is basically innovation. Wow, I didn't know that existed. I didn't know this problem could be solved. So when we think about innovation, we're trying to surprise our audience by teaching something, a way to solve their problem that they did not know about.
Yeah, I think that's all we have for now.
Yeah, well, look, we have a lot of different ways that we can do it, but ultimately, what I want to show you is that it almost doesn't matter because ultimately, what the science has shown is that the more fe people feel, the more they buy. It doesn't matter the emotion. There's only one thing on there that matters, and it's this one. It's the neutral. And this is where most brands make the mistake on falling flat because they're so scared to push for one of these emotions that they end up communicating no emotion at all. And ultimately, this has been proven by the company System One that showed that most companies are, when you feel nothing, you do nothing. And they're so afraid of communicating these so-called negative emotions to making their audience experiences fear, disgust, anger, that they leave a lot of emotion on the table. And what System One have proved is that the best way to do this is to introduce a little bit of negative emotion and then show it being resolved by positive emotion. And why I love that is we've basically said you need a story because that's what every story is. A story is you have someone, they go through a problem, that problem is resolved. And we've seen that already in our logic. So what we need, the best way to create emotion is to communicate it via a story. And there's another reason for that, and it comes in one word. So the first lesson I told you, it's all about contrast. And for now, I'm going to say this second one is all about conflict. So how do we do this? So lesson number 2 for emotion is always going to be about conflict, but I'm going to make it a little bit more difficult for you because conflict won't work for everyone. So we have to customize that conflict. And whether you know it or not, we're absorbing this every single day. I think most of you know if you go onto Netflix now, we're all seeing very different things. Each of us has been giving our own customized version of everything that's on Netflix. And you can see 9 different versions of what Stranger Things looks like. So if you've been watching horror movies before, you'll probably be shown one of these ones in the corners. If you've been watching some rom-coms or some 80s movies, maybe in the middle, or if you've watched anything with these two actors in the bottom, you might be shown this. Ultimately, they're showing you whatever you need to see to be able to make a decision to go forward. And this is what we need to do now. We need to use our understanding of our audience to tell them a customized story to speak to their customized conflict. And there's a great example of this happening right now in Europe. There's a great company here you might have heard of called Lovable. They are the fastest growing scale up in European history. And yeah, they're basically the ChatGPT for building products and websites. But they've got a little bit of a problem. They have a very different, diverse audience. They have founders, they have marketers, they have product managers, and they have designers. You've probably worked with all 4 of those people, as I have. They're very different. They have different problems, different attitudes, different values, different ambitions. How can one set of messaging work towards all of them? And there's a great example if you go to their website now of how they're altering their messaging depending on who they're speaking to, but keeping their narrative the same. So for founders, they'll be told, build it with Lovable. Your AI co-founder and development team ship your ideas in days, not months, and start building the business you've been dreaming about. For any founder, their eyes are on the runway. They need to be able to deliver quick. And this is the messaging that they deliver and the conflict that they're appealing to. What about product managers? Same product, same understanding, but demo, don't memo. Turn ideas into interactive prototypes in minutes. Align your team faster with working demos instead of endless specs. And anyone who's been a product manager can relate to that. Same messaging, but a lot more conflict for those people. Okay, what about down for designers? I've worked with the designers who believe that once they've designed it, they just see their product get worse and worse and worse as more people put their own imprint onto it. So yes, for them, your best work in production, create lovable experiences. So this really appeals to them, but still rings true to everything they're saying to the customers. And once again, what about us for marketers? Yeah, now you can ship. So build on-brand landing pages, internal tools, experimental products in hours instead of weeks. So no longer having to wait for your product team to get back to you, you can do it yourself. So this is a really nice example how you can take one message and use the emotional understanding of your 4 targets and customize it towards them. Ultimately, I encourage you to do this when I do it in my workshops and in my cohort. I follow this methodology. I've seen personas used across 100 different companies. The only one thing that connects them is that no one really uses personas correctly. When I go in and I do my research, there's very little alignment between teams about who they're aiming for and why. So I don't use personas. I just want answers to 4 questions. I want to know who they are. So splitting them into important groups, just like founders, marketers, designers, and product managers. Ultimately, I want to split them by what they feel. What are they feeling when we talk to them, and how do they feel about the problem that we're trying to solve? This is how you're going to identify those moments of conflict. Once you've got that, you need to understand why they buy. So, what is the trigger that leads them to us so that we can start talking about that trigger as the solution to the conflict? And very important in B2B, how are they actually buying? Because it's very easy, as I said, to convince a CMO, the marketers, the most persuadable. But how do we make sure that the CFO, the head of legal, the founder has also got enough information and their understanding of conflict to make sure everyone in the buying committee says yes? And ultimately, why do we want to do that? As I said, making it simple. Here's how much better your life will be. The interesting thing here is your life. We are all very different. We are all process emotions differently. And so we need to make it specific for their life. And you can't make it specific without an understanding of your audience. So this is the second key area to learn from. So that brings us onto the home straight. Don't worry, we're almost there. And it's the third part of our triangle. We've done logic, we've done emotion. But if I'm being honest with you, I spend most of my career on this third one because I meet with so many talented marketers that are very good at communicating their contrast. They're very good at customizing their conflict. But the one thing we all seem to fall down on is credibility. And I think there's a really good reason for that. As put by Scott Brinker in 2011, were 150 MarTech products. In 2025, there were over 15,000. And this, I think you're seeing across every industry. I'm going to assume your industry as well. And here's a visual representation of what the MarTech landscape looked like in 2020. And each one of these pixels is a brand with a product and a team and a stressed product marketer with features and stories. And they're all in your LinkedIn box trying to book a demo. And to make it worse, like say, this is 2020 and this is 2024. And so eventually, I think it's going to look like this, where with a good AI subscription, we can all build a company in a weekend, and there's going to be more products than people. So, how do we tell stories in an environment like this? And this is why this credibility section is the most important, because I believe that we're living in this age of information overload. To put that into perspective, each one of us digests around 32 gigabytes of information every day. So it's a new reality. We've never been absorbing more information. And that really affects how our brains make decisions. Even if I've got your attention, the average number of open tabs on a desktop is 18. I want you all to check your own desktops now. Don't feel guilty about it. Jasmine, I can see you nodding. You might be above this. But look, this is the reality. Even if I've got your attention, I have 1/18 of it. And we need to understand this. All of us are doing 50 things at once. And what about time? Do you remember when I told you stories are the fastest way to communicate information? Well, TikTok is where most of the eyeballs are in the world these days. The average watch time of a TikTok video is 3.3 seconds. And before I started doing this presentation, you might think that's impossible to tell a story in 3.3 seconds, but I'm hoping you're remembering the ChatGPT example I gave you. You can do it in less than 1 second. If you have the best understanding, you can do it in a single visual. But why should anyone believe what you're saying? Ultimately, I think most of us feel that our we're in this kind of goldfish stage. Most of us feel that our attention span is worse than it was 10 years ago. I have good news for you. Your attention span scientifically is exactly the same. What's not the same is your tolerance for bullshit. All of our tolerance for things that we don't believe has gone radically reduced. And this is why it's become so difficult to get our message across because we'll all become more cynical, and rightly so. This is our kind of daily life. This is how every time we're trying to buy anything, we're just overwhelmed and it makes decision making harder. And it makes it harder for us to believe anything that anyone is saying to us. So, how do we tell stories in this environment? The important thing to understand about all of this is that we don't create stories in a vacuum. And this is why we need to understand all of the other stories in the market to be able to position ours to be believable. Um, Ultimately, I really like this quote from Jeff Bezos when he was asked about why the Washington Post's credibility dropped below 17%. He said that voting machines must now meet two requirements. They must count the vote accurately, and people must believe that they count the vote accurately. And I think this is entirely true for product. It used to be that if you just had the best product in the market, you won the market. And it's not true anymore. And if you look at the most industries, the best product rarely wins. You need to make people believe it's the best product. And I think that's our responsibility as marketers is to not just say something's great, but to actually show it as well. How do we do that? Well, that's going to lead us to our third rule, where I'm going to encourage you all to simply show under the hood. Really, I believe there are 5 ways to communicate credibility. If you've been around for 100 years, that's great. You've got these meaningful advantages of the past and you can leverage them. A good example, if I gave everyone on this call a free Rolex, you wouldn't ask me what color it is, what the features are, you'd just say yes. Most of you have the iPhone 18. You're not going to ask what's in the 19, you're just going to get it because they're leveraging their advantages of the past. Maybe you haven't been around for long, but you've got a really big reach. So there's a lot of people who listen to you and respect you. A great example of this is Uber Eats. There were several better solutions to delivering you food before Uber got involved, but Uber didn't need to prove that they could safely deliver you a pizza because they'd been safely delivering people for a long time. So they could leverage their position to go into a new market and to use their reach as credibility. Maybe you can't reach a huge amount of people, but maybe there's that one type of person in the market who really respects you, and that's your relevance. And I always give this example is your ability to connect more deeply with a subgroup. I want you all to imagine what a Harley Davidson customer looks like. We all probably have the same person in our mind right now. And if Harley Davidson came out with a barbecue next year, even though they have no credibility in building barbecues, I bet we all believe that they would sell a lot of barbecues. Why? Because people believe and they're connected so deeply with them that they can leverage their credibility into a new category. I'm going to assume, knowing the industry that all of you are in, that 90% of your budgets are here. Authority, definitive perspectives and informations. We're all trying to convince everyone that we are the expert. Just go spend 10 minutes on LinkedIn and you'll be overwhelmed by people convincing you of this. We're trying to convince you that here's this white paper, here's this testimonial, read this case study. This is why we're the best. And this is a very good way to do it. But ultimately, what I want to show you is this fifth one. Because I believe that the markets have become so cynical that although these other four you should push, where you want to find your answer is this fifth one result. And this is the ability to show an undeniable outcome. I'll give you a nice example of someone I've mentioned already, Lovable. Lovable don't use any copy to convince you of why they're great. They just show you all of the things their customers have created and say, look, our customers are our credentials. So we're not going to say anything about how great we are, or we're not going to get any testimonials. Just look at the work that's being done and use their product to tell the story of their credibility. Taking it one step further, look at Grammarly. Grammarly have to convince you of three things: that they can fix your spelling, that they can turn one sentence into five sentences, and that they can change your tone of voice. Now, they can either write a lot of copy about that, or they can create this animation on the hero segment, which shows someone doing all three. And I can actually see with my own eyes the value of their product. And this is what's getting really popular right now is less saying and more showing. Another great example, Fig Jam don't even have a hero segment. This is the top of their page. Why would I tell you about how important it is to do creative collaboration? Why don't I just show 16 people collaborating creatively? And you'll get the understanding about why this is powerful. And so this is where the market is going. And so I really encourage you to find ways where people don't have to believe you because they can believe their own eyes. I have a big problem because I work with engineers and product people, and they remind me of this lady in my photo who has the perfect opportunity to show you how great her robot vacuum cleaner is, and yet is using a $1 mop to clean the floors of the shop. For me, this is a metaphor for what B2B tech is like, where we're making it way too hard for our audience to experience and understand the value of our product because we're hiding it behind product pages and demo calls, and we need to bring it front and center. Don't hide it, bring it first thing, let people see why you're great. That is the best form of credibility, is simply to show, don't tell. Okay, so I'm just going to finish up here now because we've got enough time for questions, but I promised I'd make this simple for you. At the beginning, I told you that people don't buy products, they buy stories. And so that every company that's going to win, they need to develop a clear product narrative. I've been doing this for a very long time, and I've noticed the same patterns emerging in every industry that I work in. Ultimately, this is what I see. You have a situation where companies, people don't understand what their product actually does. Marketing, sales, and product are all telling different stories, and buyers struggle to understand why they should choose you over the growing number of competitors in the market. On the other side, for the brands that are winning, you have buyers don't really have to work hard to understand you. They get it intuitively in a moment. They hear a consistent story everywhere they look. So the first landing page to the final sales call and contract, they're hearing the same thing. And because of that, that builds belief. So your audience isn't just getting educated on what you do, they're getting inspired that you are the best at delivering that value. The difference between those two worlds is a successful product narrative, which is basically the shaping and communicating a story which says what you do, who for, and why it matters. So what I really encourage you to do is next week, if you've got time, is to send this survey around your company. And I've got a copy of this that I can send it to make it easier. Ask everyone in the company, what value does your product create? Which customers care most about this value? And why are you the best at creating this value? Do not be scared when you see the results. As I mentioned, it's around 19% average, but it's a great wake up call for you to go to the rest of the people in your company and say, I think we need to get our story straight because how can we convince people outside of our value if we don't do it inside? So I really encourage you, if you're really inspired by this session and you want to try it, I'll give you this survey, ask everyone in their company, and like I say, don't be scared if you get the results. It's a great way to get budget from someone above you to say, hey, we need to get our story straight. So why don't we sit together and work it out? Ultimately, if you need a little bit of a hand doing that, just skipping along to how you can do that. I'll leave that QR code on now. Like I say, I've got a few books that you can read to be able to do that. And hopefully it gives you a little bit more information about how you can start bringing storytelling, not as a skill, but as a function into your company. And if you need a little bit of help, you can speak to me as well. I do this for a living. More than happy to give you some advice or to come in and help all of you with your storytelling as well. And if you want to take it one step further, starting next week and also in September, I'm running a cohort where you can bring your product into that cohort and I will help build your story. So a group of marketing and product leaders all together and helping working on product narratives. So if you want to join, reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. But for right now, we've got a little bit of time left and I'm really happy to answer any questions you might have about storytelling, about product narratives, or anything else that I've presented. With that in mind, I'll come back to you and hand it back over to you, Jasmine.
Fabulous. That was really enlightening. Thank you, on behalf of our attendees, Elliot. I want to encourage everybody, please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to enter in any questions that you have for Elliot. In the meantime, we do have a couple here. What's the first thing we should change tomorrow to improve our product story?
Yeah, I think you want to gain an understanding of those three things. So I often say is what is the story that you can tell better than anyone else in the market? Ultimately, that comes down to positioning. And I think before you write a single line of messaging, you need to get an understanding of what message or what story you can tell by better than anyone else. So really get an understanding of those other voices in the market, I see as that fundamental first stop. That's why I start with logic. That's rule one. So understanding what contrast you can communicate. But the step before that, as I mentioned, start with the survey. Take the survey into your company because that's going to really give you the motivation that this is a problem worth solving and something worth investing in. Because I think it's great to go to your CEO and ask them, hey, look at these three questions. What percentage alignment do you think we would get? And I guarantee they're going to say 50, 60, 70% because they'll be horrified to think anything less. And so it's great to get them to give a prediction and then go back to them with the truth because then it really helps open up that you need to spend a bit more time on this.
Yeah. I certainly would have been horrified if that was the answer. But
Yeah.
I think the good news is that means there's an opportunity to
Yeah,
change this.
absolutely. And it's natural that as your company grows, you're going to lose that narrative. And we're all working remotely. We're not spending as much time as we used to. Product roadmaps are moving faster. So alignment is a really underappreciated and we don't spend enough time trying to achieve alignment because it's not the sexiest of things. But in my experience, that's the best storytelling brands are the ones that are the most aligned.
Another question is, following the Harley-Davidson point you made regarding relevance,
Hmm.
what are some tips you can give for a company that has the subgroup connection but needs new storytelling to resonate with customers in a new market area?
Yeah, I think you can. That's why you can leverage your relevance from one market into another one. I mean, that's why case studies work so great. Whenever I have to go into a new company and they say, "Well, you've got no experience in this area," well, I can say, "Well, look, let me show you how my process worked in this industry." And so I think it's much better than starting from scratch, is that it's not hard to translate your successes from a previously relevant section and bring that into that new area. And if that doesn't work, that's where you can elevate some of the other credibilities. So, like authority, how can you build authority into that new area? Do you need to build partnerships? Can you borrow credibility from someone who has relevance that you don't have? So there are other ways to do that. But yeah, I think that's why going through those five sources, mapping it out with your team to understand, we need the credibility. What's our strongest source and what's our weakest one? That's a great conversation to start to be able to do that.
Yeah. Key opinion leaders are often used in our
Hmm.
industry to that point.
Of course, yeah. Borrowed credibility. And it can have different varies of success. When I was at Adidas, we didn't have to market hard. We got David Beckham to wear it and it would sell. Those days are over. Especially the younger generation aren't as influenced in some ways by certain brand ambassadors, but experts are still very understood. If you can prove to be an expert in an area, that's very valid. So worth exploring.
Great. Should product marketing own the narrative or should it be more cross-functional?
Well, this is a very biased thing because I'm a product marketer, so I'm going to say yes. What I will say is I believe product marketing is the best equipped because hopefully, as I've shown you, a product narrative depends on an understanding of the product, an understanding of the audience, and an understanding of the market. For me, that's product marketing. You need an understanding of those three things. Product has product, but they don't have maybe the market. Marketing has the market, but they maybe don't have the product. And so that's why I think. But ultimately, it is cross-functionally. You need to bring brand into the conversation. And this is what I mean about alignment. When I do my storytelling workshops, I refuse to do them with just marketers. I say, bring in your most angry and reluctant product and salespeople, and let's convince them in the room. Because there's no point taking a great story, a great marketing story, and then hoping that sales and product run with it. Build the story with them, with their insights, with their understanding, with their anecdotes, and then they're going to be a lot easier for them to be aligned on it because then it's no longer a marketing story. It's a story we've built together. So I think product marketing is at the heart of it. But as with everything with product marketing, we're just aligning and we get credit for nothing, but we're in everything.
Yeah, I'm definitely in team cross-functional.
Hmm.
I think it's really important, especially in our industry, to bring in the field application scientists, to bring in sales, to bring in the product specialists that are spending
Yeah.
90% of their time in the field.
Yeah.
The single reason to avoid biases that the product marketer might have.
Remember what I said about personas? That's the first thing I ask. They share with me their persona documents, and then I go speak to all of the sales team, and they're like, "I've never seen this before," or I think there's a massive overestimation that marketing thinks that sales are using everything they create. And I think the first stage is to admit, and it allows you to create things in the format that sales want. And that's why I like to teach the storytelling element of it, because once sales are just competitive. And once they understand, oh, I can make more sales if I have a story, that then they're on board. And that's why it's don't just give them the story, bring them into the storytelling process, and they're going to do it because ultimately it's going to help them make more sales, and that's what they want.
Yeah. Yeah. So another question, do you believe content is dying since authority seems overused?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Um, I mean, I guess it can't be dying because it's everywhere. So I think it's like it almost has the life of like a flea, you know. It's populating, it's repopulating, so it's not dying, but it's the living its lifespan is reducing. And this is why I think that the brands that are winning are the ones that aren't changing their story every 3 months. That consistency is so powerful. And that's why a narrative is so great because, and this is why I see the difference between a story and a narrative. You can change your story every few months, but it should still be connected to a long-term narrative of this is who we are and this is what value we bring and this is why we're the best at it. And the more that you can keep that solid over 1 year, 10 years, 20 years, then your content's gonna survive a lot longer because it feels more authentic because you're building a story and backing it up rather than listening to the market and saying whatever they want to hear and changing direction. And I think that's the most important thing when it comes to authenticity. And it's another reason to get everyone in the room and build your product narrative. It's a I spend most of I'm the busiest January to March because that's when people come back from the new year and they're like, right, we need to get aligned. We need to get our strategy, and that's when I come in to do that. And so I think that's the most important thing. And the more you can keep that, I mean, it's very difficult because the average lifespan of a CMO is around 6 months, and every CMO who comes in wants to change everything so that they can put their own stamp on it. But the more that people can reduce or restrict that, the stronger they'll be.
Yeah. I mean, the last thing you want to do is create audience whiplash that they
That's
just
it.
don't understand.
But there's a lot of that, right? I think I've seen it. I've been a part of it. I've failed to prevent it from the inside. And I understand the reasons for it because the markets are moving quickly. But then, like I always say, just go on G2 and look at the brands that are winning. And the brands that are winning aren't doing that. And the brands that are winning don't necessarily have the best product. And so if you really want to convince people of to uh, resist the temptation to do that, you can just point to the other brands that aren't doing that and how well they're doing.
Mhm. So, what do you say to salespeople who want commercial language and commercial documents and dismiss arguments that feature words like emotion and feelings?
Yeah, the first thing is that education was that you can have the commercial words. Commercial words, I would say, do have emotion, and also it's the education that everything is emotional. Even if you have the most boring product in the world, you're usually buying it because it's going to save me stress or it's going to save me time. And you tell me something not more emotional than being overstressed or having no time. So it's an understanding, and like I say, bring them on the process. That graph of you tell your salespeople, don't tell them I want you to be more emotional. Tell them I want you to get more attention. Or how do I do that? Well, here's scientifically, it's proven that there's nothing better to grab attention than emotion. So stay away from emotion. You just use the language that they need. They want attention. And I think if you can prove them to them that this is the best hook to put in the water, and if they do it once, then they're good. But also put it into the format that they want. They're going to be there doing their job. The more that you can make their lives easy, then there's no problem. And the final thing is they're telling stories. Go spend time. One of the best storytelling techniques is to just listen, because once again, you're going to customize your story. Every time I would go with my sales team on any call or any visit, I'd get nervous that we've been with them for 30 minutes and we haven't talked about the product, we haven't pitched, we're losing so much time. But that's what sales do. They listen, they're waiting for the opportunity for them to say something that they can go, do you remember earlier when you said that you really struggle on Tuesdays with this? Actually, we've got a new feature that might be great for that. They haven't been taught about the science of storytelling. They've just done what works, but what works is storytelling. So what you'll find is that your salespeople are already natural storytellers, and all you're doing is putting the ammunition in their hands so they can be even better.
Superb. So we'll end on this last question. This person is pulling on our red thread of audience whiplash. and is
Yeah.
asking how much time roughly does it take to start gaining ground with your product story if you're starting from scratch?
Yeah, it's a great question. And what I like to do is you use this survey continually, almost like an NPS score, and then you'll be able to see how quickly it's working. Because obviously, if you're getting 19% and then next month you send the question and you're getting 30%, or maybe design has gone up to 50%, but products still at 20%, it can happen very quickly in a small company because you can stand up and bring everyone together. The bigger the company is, the harder it is and the longer it takes. But the more simple you make the narrative, and this is why what I say is don't create a 7 page vision statement or a brand book. Like I say, here's how much better your life will be. This is something that everyone in the company can remember, and it addresses the answers to those 3 questions. That's all you need to remember. So the simpler you make it, the quicker everyone will learn it. And maybe you learn that it's not perfect and you need to change it, and that's fine as well. But now you have a method to do that. Previously, we're just guessing, but I really I think a great way is to, there's nothing more rewarding that you visit a salesperson and they start using the things that you've been saying and you're like, it's working, it's in their brains. You start to see popping it up on content, and then you elevate that even further. So I really encourage you to use that survey not once, but repeatedly to show, to get evidence that it's working. Because, like I say, hopefully you've learned from this lesson, approach it as a science and use it as a KPI. So you can go back to your C level and say, hey, our narrative alignment's down to 15%. We need to do something about it. That's going to allow storytelling to be not this creative, fluffy thing that the CEO thinks you had a couple of glasses of wine, went for a run, came up with a new idea. But no, we're a scientific division. We're marketing. We're about how people think, feel, and behave. And it's about alignment. And now we have a process. It's backed by science and a KPI. And I hope what I've shown you today allows you to take that back into your own companies. And if you need help, reach out to me on LinkedIn or read the book. I'm more than happy to help you as well.
Super. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Elliot. This has been a fabulous session. I know that our attendees have learned tons. And again, a reminder, if you have any other questions for Elliot, please reach out to him on LinkedIn. Thanks again for attending. Bye for now.
Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye.